Good
Good
morning, Dr.
morning.
Stroman. How you doing this morning, Dr. Stroman?
I am doing well.
Yeah?
Yeah.
As you all know, I was away, and
Yeah, we know.
just lots on my mind, lots of clarity,
Mm.
lots of things. Just thinking about life. You know, when you get a certain age, you start thinking about next chapter and legacy and significance, and you don't want to deal with the stupid stuff. And
Yeah.
That's right.
you know, that's what happens. But you know, there is no doubt that this week, you know, is really, really heavy. So what I wanted to talk about is just talk about sports as a healer and what we're doing here. So I want to just ask you all, you know, why do we take the time, and it can be up to, 3 to 4 hours watching sports? There's no doubt we have work responsibilities. We've got family commitments. What do you call them? Those honey-do lists. We've got health and wellness. You know, we're supposed to be working out, self-care, community care, the politics, you know, sitting on the sidelines is no longer, it's just not people aren't tolerating people sitting on the sidelines anymore because we have so much at stake with these political races. We're trying to make money, right? Other streams of income. And yet we sit and watch sports. And this really hit me because just thinking about what happened on Monday, the UNC tragedy, the UNC campus community, whether you're on campus or you're living in Texas or, you know, Australia, we were very fearful.
Yeah.
The student newspaper, the Daily Tar Heel, which is now online due to financial constraints, COVID, a little mix of everything. They do print once a week on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And the students, the staff there, they decided to design the cover page, which has gotten national attention, even by President Biden. He tweeted it out with a jarring listing of texts that were received by staff members during the lockdown. And then that same edition this past Wednesday was also to be the preview edition of the opening game for the Tar Heels against the Gamecocks on Saturday. So two totally different stories, which are unrelated. And yet some people would say, no, they're very related. So I just want to ask you all, maybe that just to have our thoughts around, does it really provide an escape for us from all the pain, trauma, and horrors of life? Or is it just, and I don't want to say silly, but is it just a mask or a distraction so we don't address how ugly life can be, how difficult it is to pay our bills, have healthy relationships with family members who are jerks or partners and spouses who get on our last nerves? Is it, you know, all the sacrifices we make to plan for retirement or to pay for your child's future education? So what does sport really do for us?
It does, Dr. Stroman, I think it does all of those things, depending on who's taking it in, who's participating in it. But I would like to say, just make a quick note that I believe that just saying it's about sport is not quite fair to sports, because people do that with a variety of things: fishing, hunting, painting, any hobby, anything that's not associated with those things you just mentioned is what people do. It's just that sports seems to be the one that is done in mass quantities with everyone that seems to be participating all at the same time. But outside of that, I think everybody has some outlet, some healthy outlet of sorts that they gravitate to outside of all of those things you just mentioned.
I think it's all of the above. I think sports and watching sports is a connector as well, which makes it a great thing. It connects us in many ways. We've talked about that a lot on here.
Sure.
Connect us with politics. It's just a connector. It's a happy place. It's also a disruptor that we don't have to deal with some of the other things. We can just watch sports. So I think it's both.
Wow. Well, I agree with K-Mac and Pam. And for me, I would add that sports has been like a mental sabbatical for me at times, given the scenario. I think about times, even when the most depressed times that you could be in, or when you're sad about other things. I can recall, the repast after a funeral and the conversation to get people engaged and somewhat distracted away from what we're doing, what we just saw, is sports, and it kind of brings everybody kind of locked into a conversation that's not relative to what we just saw, what we were involved in. It's a common place where we can share and have a little distraction and forget about what's really going on. And not saying that it's you forget about it entirely, but just for that moment, you can somewhat take a sabbatical on it. So I call it a mental sabbatical for me, and I've used that many times when I'm in situations like that.
All wonderful, great points. I agree with you 150%. I'm thinking about those times that we have where we feel a little guilty. So I'm talking about, all of us have a great connection with sports through participation as well.
Sure.
Right? We get this. We've sweated. We've been on teams. We know what it does. But think about those people who look at us and say, how can they do that? How can they go to the game? Some figure has just, a prominent figure that we all know, has just been shot, or somebody just died. How can they decide to have that game?
Yeah.
Why isn't it canceled? And I think there's a time I feel like, but I eat, sleep, and drink sports.
Right.
And I know you all do too.
Yeah.
Right.
So how do we manage that? Do we just say they don't get it? And I know we don't say it out loud, but that's what we're processing in our mind.
Right.
Or to you all's points, well, it's a connector. It's my escape. It's,
Right.
those people who look at us and say, how uncaring are we?
Oh my goodness. You know what, Dr. Stroman? So when you said that, it made me think about just that, the divide between people that sports is that outlet for them and people that sports is not. Most of the people that are saying those things, sports is not. But those people that may be saying that, traveling to the mountains on the weekend is their thing, right? They wouldn't cancel their trip to the mountains for that weekend.
Wow.
Great point.
Right?
Great point.
But they don't see it that way because sports is not that outlet for them. So and it's just, to me, I just always turn that back around.
No, they flip it. They say, well, that's what they would want me to do.
Yeah, that's
you know all the time.
Right.
That's the excuse they use when they want to lean into that. That's what they
Right.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the same thing, right? So you have a tragedy that happens in this country, and you have this trip planned to Aruba with your family, right? And now,
it's like, why can't I say Aruba?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Right, but I'm sorry, the Bahamas. and so, but you didn't cancel your family vacation,
Right.
To the Bahamas, in light of this tragedy.
Right.
Yeah, exactly right.
You know what I mean? But because it feels, you have a different feeling towards sports than I do.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
than those 60,000 people that attended the game.
To that distraction.
Right.
Or whatever.
To that distraction.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's easy to sit back and go, wow, I just can't believe you would like, did you go out to dinner? This dinner you had planned?
Yeah.
With 14 people from the neighborhood this week?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you cancel the dinner?
Right.
Because I'm sure you weren't going to all sit around and just mourn the loss of whatever.
Right.
It was going to be a joyous dinner.
Sure.
A birthday dinner for somebody.
Yep.
You didn't cancel that.
Right.
And that's the reason, because they don't see it the same way
That's
as
fair.
people that
That's fair.
appreciate sports.
Yeah, because you're
And I'm
seeing.
okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're seeing through the eyes of what you're connected to.
Exactly. And what
Simple
you
as that.
appreciate or what you love to do or whatever. That's what it is. Yeah.
But
That's
might
your
just have
overall
to be-
perspective.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is about, and maybe it's because sports is always about some form of joy.
Yeah.
It's always.
Yeah.
So people always look down on sports like, I dare you have fun. Or it's just a game.
Yeah.
Or this is just a joke. I'm like, it's always looked at as some form of true entertainment versus sport. Now, some people like to say sports is entertainment, but I believe sports is sports, and then it turns into a form of entertainment because you love sports. But some people put entertainment before the sport.
Right.
I'll also add that sport is also associated with money.
Lots of it.
And I'll even say youth sports as well. But there's no doubt I mean, I love your analogy of somebody doing a road trip to the Bahamas or even to the mountains. That costs money, but we don't think about it that way. But when we think about sports, the money that you spend on the tickets,
right?
How much does it cost for the popcorn and the hot dogs and the, and now you've got the player's jersey on. So it's associated with this cold, callous thing of money that you could spend the money on that versus, staying in a place of grief or, just processing. Yeah. So I think the more the sport becomes commercialized, the more people see it as, you're doing something fun when you should be grieving.
Right. Yeah, you spend $1,200 for a weekend to go watch the leaves change. My bad.
Yes.
If
that's my thing, that's my thing, then yes, I do that.
That's what it is.
You can watch. I'm looking at leaves change right now.
Watch this. Some people go to Costa Rica and just hang out.
Well, that's different.
That's their thing. I just wish they'd take us.
I wish they'd take us.
No.
I ain't gonna call no names.
Look,
I'm just saying.
I was gonna ask. Please tell me I don't have to sign up for the retreat to go.
I know.
I still want to go.
An invite would be very, very nice. How about
I want to go. I can cover my own airfare. I got it. Trust me.
Well, speak for yourself.
I know that's right, Pam.
I mean, she might want to help us out. Speak for yourself.
Ellen know you too.
Wow.
You all are something else. But, it reminds me of, oftentimes I've been in a situation where it's a very hurtful, painful situation, and yet I find myself with a giggle. So we're talking about the science of how close biologically how we're wired for crying and laughing. And so it's called incongruous or dimorphous behaviors. Incongruous or dimorphous behaviors.
Expressions,
we hear tears of joy, smiles of sadness, nervous laughter. The key is our body is trying to regulate ourselves, trying to regulate our emotions. As in, there's some evidence out there that shows that the same part of the brain controls both crying and laughing.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yes,
I believe that,
Yeah. And it's different from when, the wind is passing through and you get teary-eyed. It's not that. We're talking about crying and laughing have positive emotional benefits. And sometimes our brains get a little, little off-wired a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about the body, again, trying to deal with our hormones and releasing of endomorphins and things like that. So it gives us that feel-good effect. Wow. I also am reminded about what's going on over at NC State. Sadly, or not so sadly, a lot of people aren't aware that over the past year, they had 14 deaths. Mm-hmm. And 7 by suicide.
Yes.
I'm so glad my dear friend Joel over at WTVD ABC 11 did a big story on it, and NC State is ramping up dollars and resources, hiring more staff.
Yep.
So again, you go into the school year, and for many, it's very, very, very emotional. How are you going to process this? And not to point out NC State because it's happening all across the country.
Yes.
How do we respond to tragedy?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But this is where we are. So I'll close out just by saying thank you for this conversation. Thank you for the great points. We move forward with gentleness and grace with one another. And I'm hopeful that people, who decide to go to Charlotte to watch the game, I'm reminded of that hashtag, Carolina strong, Pittsburgh strong, right. Whatever strong. I think that, I don't know where it came from, but to me, it just smells like it came from a sports theme. And so if sport can continue to lift us up and be that connector, thank you, Pam, that can unify us, then that's what we do.
Well, Dr. Stroman, I just thought about this. I'll be remiss if I don't mention one thing where it makes sense to kind of put sports on the back burner. Situation happened last year in Virginia.
Thank you.
With UVA and the football team, and how tragic that situation was with the football team, and they canceled some games. I think some things make real sense.
Makes sense,
right?
Particularly these guys were on the football. Some things make real sense. So I just want to add that too as well, because just so it's kind of frame the conversation as well.
And it was so many. It was multiple people on the football.
Right, exactly.
That were impacted by it, and because now you're asking. People to go out and perform.
I mean, the teammates.
When it's their teammates, people that sit next to them.
Yeah.
So Yeah, you're right. It makes sense.
That makes sense. Anyway,
It just makes sense.
I just want to add that because this is a great conversation, by the way. This is unbelievable. I appreciate you bringing it up, Dr. Stroman.
Well, thank you. And thank you for, I do want to say their names, Devin Chandler, Deshaun Perry, and Lavelle Davis Jr.
Right.
You know, going into this weekend, and the Virginia game at Tennessee is one of the featured games this weekend because you just don't know how these young men will respond for the first time running out there without their teammate, or their fallen teammate. So if Virginia loses, it's going to be a win in the sense that the team was able to come together. That's the program. I know there'll be a lot of Tennessee people cheering for Virginia as much as they're cheering for their own. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
As always, Dr. Stroman, we appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend.
You too.